This episode, we have special guest Emma Eelkema, one of the 2 children's ministry assistants at the Garden Fellowship. Today, she's going to be talking a bit about what living like a Great Commission Christian looks like in children's ministry. So, Emma, why don't you begin by talking a bit about your background?
All right. So, my background, I was basically born in church and was brought on as a volunteer just as a baby because my mom was a children's ministry director. As a high school student, I started helping out Tuesday mornings with this little Bible study group, and I'd watch over 3-year-olds, and it was super fun, super awesome. I loved it. Later on, I ended up going to Bible college, and that is where I got a lot of knowledge about ministry and really had the call to ministry. I ended up coming back from Bible college for summer break and summer of 2022, I think, and was an intern for the children's ministry at the Garden Fellowship. And after that, I went back to the Bible college. I graduate in 12 days with a bachelor's degree in biblical studies with an emphasis in Christian leadership. And then after that, I just continue to do what I'm doing at the Garden as a full-time vocational ministry worker in the children's ministry.
Awesome. So, you interned for the Garden Fellowship in the children's ministry as well, correct?
Correct.
Can you tell me a bit about that?
So I came on as an intern, and they had this super small internship program. It was basically kids who were raised in the church, just continuing to do what the Lord had called them and was equipping them to do. So we were all in different areas. Mine specifically, I was with all the little kids, and I was focused in the elementary department of the church. So I would basically call the kids out of their classrooms for their big group time. I would do announcements with them, sing happy birthday to the birthday kids, introduce the new kids. I would help print their labels, clean classrooms, sharpen pencils, help volunteers know what to do, where they're going, take care of disciplinary issues, step in to teach every once in a while. So interning isn't super different than the work that I'm doing now. But when I was an intern, I was with elementary school students, and now I'm more with like early childhood babies.
Awesome. What was it like to teach as an intern?
Scary. The first time I taught, I did the Abraham and Isaac story, and being a Bible college kid, I'm like, yeah, so this guy brought his 30-year-old kid up to kill him as a sacrifice. So it was really weird to try and transition from like talking to 20-year-old Bible college students about the same topics to speaking to like 7-year-olds about that. So it was very intimidating, and I was very, very timid. But it was a super great experience, and it just showed me that I love to teach kids, and I love to present the gospel and the Lord to them, so that way they can just grow in their faith and in their knowledge of Scripture.
Mm-hmm. I imagine that dealing with disciplinary issues as an intern was pretty intimidating as well.
It definitely was. Thankfully, there's a super great team, and so the major disciplinary issues were not falling on me. I was mostly like, hey, you guys, you're being disrespectful to your teachers. Let's quiet down. Let's remember what listening is like. But there were times where I was like, okay, we don't crawl under the bathroom stalls because that's inappropriate behavior. But with younger siblings and stuff, it wasn't like terrible because I was used to getting on their case anyways.
Mm. You said that you also dealt with volunteers. Do you have a big volunteer group?
We do. So our church is really large. We have just over 300 kids on a Sunday. So our volunteers, we have about 100 coming in and out, which is super great.
Yeah, definitely. What was it like as an intern to interact with those volunteers?
It was super weird, but super sweet because they were able to acknowledge my position and respect me for it. But it was definitely strange being a very young woman directing older men and women. The men were a lot more receptive because they just were like, okay, this is your area. But the women were like, no, we got to do it this way. And I was like, okay, no. So that it was a very common thing for me to get my boss and be like, okay, we got to help this person out again.
Yeah, definitely. Have you worked with kids before?
I have. So before I got hired on at the garden, I was obviously an intern for them. I was in children's ministry a ton. I would babysit just on the weekends. But then when I first came back home from Bible college, I was a nanny, which was super, super sweet. I loved it. And then I started working at a different church in the evenings to help out with their childcare program. It was basically like as the parents were getting fed, the kids were just watched over and kept safe. And so it was super sweet to be able to pour into them.
For sure. So why don't you tell me a bit about your current situation? So you're no longer an intern at the Garden
Mm-hmm.
Fellowship. You are now
I'm full-time staff.
awesome. So you are one of the two assistant in the children's ministry. That's
Yeah.
correct?
Yep. Yeah. So with two assistants, we have one that covers elementary and one that covers early childhood. We have like 13 classrooms, I think it is. And then with 300 kids, it's so much for one person to take on that it's really helpful with two different assistants who are able to cover completely different things. Because being with a fifth grader, so like a 10, 11-year old, is very different than being with a 2-year old. There are different life problems, there's different like boundaries, so it's super nice to be able to have two people to kind of tag team it. And so with where I'm at right now, I help the little kiddos. So anyone who's fresh out of the womb to about 6 years old, not in first grade yet, I will like help their volunteers kind of know what to do. I take kids to the bathroom, change diapers. That's not the most exciting thing ever, but it needs to be done. I do all their printing. I help teach them sometimes. Do worship with them. With them, I do a lot more disciplinary stuff. It's definitely interesting with 3-year-olds. They're super great though, so it's super fun just watching over kiddos.
Yeah, and you currently attend Bible college, correct?
I do, so I should be done within the next 12 days.
What has it been like balancing working full time at the church and also doing Bible college?
It's been a lot, not gonna lie. Um, it's also it's been difficult for me. I've had to seek the Lord in this um, to be able to keep going because I'm like, okay, God, like you have provided my like dream ministry job. You've provided what you've called me to. Why do I need to finish this degree? And so remembering that He's called me to Bible college very specifically, and knowing that I should be faithful to that call, to just practice discipline, honestly, has been very important and has been something that I've had to pray through a lot. Um, but it's definitely tested me as you have to make so much time and you really have to your work schedule, which is constantly changing because you're in ministry, but that school schedule too, it's so much, and this is the largest amount of credits that I've ever taken, which I would never want to do again. I'm taking 30 credits, so 11 classes, and it was honestly super hard to balance out, and I cannot wait for it to be done. But it's also been super rewarding. I've been able to immediately apply things from class to work. And a big thing that I've learned is as soon as I clock out, I have that like half-hour drive home to kind of debrief and pray, and then I come home and I eat a snack or something because it's been a long day. And then work brain kind of turns off. I don't let myself focus and meditate on the things throughout the day, unless it's strictly to just pray and give something to God. But I let that be that, and then I come home. I'm like, okay, I'm a student now, and I'm ready to put on my like academic cap and just focus on early childhood development or homiletics or whatever I'm working on that afternoon.
Yeah. So attending Calvary Chapel Bible College,
Mm-hmm.
have there been any classes that have stuck out that have been especially helpful for your current context?
There have been. I took an introduction to youth ministry class, which was
And who was that
super
with?
helpful. That was with Andrew Paulson. Definitely one of my favorite professors that I've had. He was super great. Um, but youth ministry is super different than children's ministry, but a lot of the like discipleship methods are the same. You just kind of have to cater it to whatever age group you're working with. That one was super great. My homiletics class, which I didn't originally like because the professor was kind of stubborn. I ended up immediately implementing as I was a Tuesday night teacher. And it was really helpful to have different teaching methods and to know, like, okay, this is what the Spirit is, this is what this specific book means, because I brought the kids through the gospel, and so having that gospel message kind of mastered throughout Bible college and throughout the different classes I've taken was also super helpful.
Definitely. So, did you end up having any sort of practical hands-on classes at the Bible college that were helpful for this job?
Not that I can think of right off of my head. I was part of a servanthood class where you went to different seminars, and so you got to learn kind of like how the church works and like what effective ministry looks like. Constantly throughout Bible college, you're learning how to be a servant, how to serve others. Um, with that servanthood class, I was a part of the school's AV team, and I'm able to do a lot of random AV stuff that we have now because our children's ministry building is separate than our main worship center, and so having someone with slight AV knowledge or audiovisual knowledge is super helpful and super practical, whether that be uploading slides, taking care of dead mics, being able to raise volume, turn the TVs on, working with the iPads and stuff. It's super practical to have that. I was also a dorm steward. And so, what a dorm steward is at the Bible college, instead of having like an RA, we have dorm stewards in almost every room. The Bible college is super small, it's like 80 to 100 students. And so, being a dorm steward is a super sweet, intimate experience where you get to just take care of and disciple and come alongside of and encourage like 8 people and just pour into them throughout that semester. And so being able to learn how to disciple while also being discipled at Bible college was super helpful to what I'm doing now as I'm discipling kids and volunteers and parents.
Definitely. What do you think some of the similarities and differences are between living life and discipling individuals who are, 18, 19, 20 years old, your
Mm-hmm.
age,
Yeah.
and discipling people who are 9 years old, all the way down to two?
Yeah, it's not as different as I thought it would be, because I feel like the purpose of discipleship is really just to come alongside of people and to meet them where they're at and to just point them to the Lord. Discipleship is not about you in any way, shape, or form. It's about like the person and helping them draw closer to the Lord. And you just get to be that vessel, whether that be like showing them doing scripture, whether that be listening to them, praying with them, or like helping them be distracted from what's going on in life. So discipling my dorm girls who were my age or older than me, um, I was able to come alongside of them and in their trials, which were similar to mine, as we're both enduring classes, as we're going through a blizzard, as we're just doing life together. Um, so it was a bit easier as I could like walk through it in the sense of like, okay, going through this with you as we're living together. But obviously, I'm not living with all 300 students that we have, and I don't know all their home life situations. And so, being able to just sit down and listen to a kid is is the sweetest thing ever. And I had an experience with a girl who we do Awanas at our church, and she just was a brand new kid. It was her first week. She was super nervous, so I like helped walk her to her classroom, introduced her to a couple girls, and she came to me during their game time and she's like, I can't play the games. And I was like, no, you can't. You're wearing Crocs and those are not sports shoes. And so she stood out and I was like, just trying to get to know her a little bit. And she started telling me about school and how she was switching schools and just a ton of super heavy family stuff. And it's just things that a 9-year-old should not have to deal with. I feel like so often people forget that kids endure the same trials adults do, but they have a lot less experience than adults. And so they're trying to figure everything out on their own. They're scared. They can't go to their parents because they know that their parents are going through stuff. They don't know how to process anything. And so being able to just sit down and listen to a kid and hug them and hold them and allow them to cry and then just show them like, hey, I know that this is super hard, but I'm here and I love you and there's a super cool guy named Jesus, and he loves you a ton. And so being able to present the gospel to those kids in those times, but just discipleship is about loving people the way Christ would have. And so it translates to any age group.
Yeah, and I think when a lot of people look at children's ministry, they think that the kids are just going to be crazy little devils.
They are.
And I think a lot of people miss, like what you were saying, the opportunity to minister to a child, that even though they are a child, they're still someone who's able to respond to the gospel. They're still someone who goes through suffering. And like what you were saying, those two things go hand in hand. A child who's going through suffering can just as easily, if not easier than an adult, be shown the gospel and be led to that.
Yeah.
So I definitely get what you're talking about. And so you were talking about teaching kids.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you were saying, you're a dorm steward, you've taken homiletics.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say are some of the major differences between teaching an adult and teaching a child?
The attention span. I was our Tuesday night Bible study leader for the kids, and so I had maybe 35 kiddos come, and we divided them by age. So we had our babies all in one room, and then everyone from the ages of 2 to 6 in a room, and then all of our 1st through 5th graders in one room. And it was chaos. It was so bad, in all honesty, because the kids just could not listen. And so me and one of my coworkers, we were just praying through it, and I look at her and I said, I don't mean to be sexist, but we need to divide these kids by their gender. And she was like, okay, is that even a good idea? And I was like, let's try it for 1 week and let's see what happens. And so we divide the kids up. They're pretty confused, so we were able to explain to them what discipleship was, what our hearts behind dividing them was. And I just told the kids, I said, you know what? To my girls who were actually able to listen, I said, the boys can handle a 3-minute lesson, and you girls can handle a 30-minute lesson. All the boys do is play games, and those games teach them about Jesus and the things that we learn about, but you guys have this drive and passion to learn, and you both boys and girls tend to learn differently. Every individual learns differently, but just for this situation, that's how it worked out. And so being able to teach the girls we all need something different, and this is how we can cater to those needs, was really awesome. So I would go into the boys' room, and seriously, let's just take the 7 days of creation. We did the creation lesson, and these guys, they sat there, kind of. One of them just kind of hovered in his seat, the other kind of ran around, but most of the guys could sit and listen, and some of them comprehended it, but they were able to get the lesson through 7 corners, where we took each day of creation and turned it into a sign and just had them choose a day to stand in, and someone would pick a day, and whoever's day that was, they were out. They were so chaotic. One of them looks at me and goes, I was telling them about the fall. Are your pants on backwards? I was like, that has nothing to do with this lesson. What are you talking about? And so just catering to the kids and meeting them where they're at is so important. So with the guys, it was just learning through experience, hands-on games. But with those girls, I was able to come to them and just explain things. I don't want to say dumb it down, because kids aren't dumb. They just don't have the same amount of knowledge as adults do. And that totally makes sense. I'm not going to come to the 2-year-olds and be like, let's talk about God's omnipresence, because they can understand the word water, and that's pretty much it. They know Cheerios really well, but I can't come to them and just say omnipresence, because they just haven't learned that yet. And so being able to come to the girls and be like, okay, this is what special revelation is, and just be like, that means that God wrote the Bible, he inspired it, and was able to reveal parts of himself. So it's when you're revealing, you're coming out of hiding. You're making yourself known, you're making yourself seen. And so just catering to the needs of the kids that you're around, like adults, you have to be able to kind of read your audience. But with kids, you have to get all these main points out super quick and super thoroughly, because they don't have the attention span to just sit and hear the same thing going on and on and on. They just have to hear boom, this is what this is. Boom, this is what this is.